Your Giants fans, let's keep it real, man. Let's just get into it. Welcome back to another preview episode, another Giants preview. Week 2, Giants versus the Bears at Chicago at Soldier Field. Second game of the New York Giants 2020 season. Let's just get into it. First things first, of course, let's talk about last week real quick. And I just want to say it's going to come up more in the video. When I say real quick, I mean at the beginning. Of course, I'm going to give a quick overview recap. If you want some more detail, go check that video out. But this is going to be just kind of the case for the entire season. Of course, we're going to look back on the previous week when we're talking about previewing the next week. And for about the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, we're going to continue to use the 2019 rankings and 2019 offensive rankings, defensive rankings, offensive stats, defensive stats like that until a Pro Football Reference or any other site that I use builds up a good enough database of 2020 information to use. So I just want to get that out the way as well. And let's just quickly kind of recap what happened against the Steelers. The Giants lost. It was a competitive game up until the third quarter. The fourth quarter, the flame kind of died out and the Giants just lost. It was very surprising to me how competitive they were without a running game, because the one thing I emphasized the most, I would say, in my preview video last week was that the Giants need to get the run game going. And in fact, if they want to win, it will have to be through the run game. That was the main thing I was talking about. Saquon had to go off. He had to be a force in the game for them to even, want to win. And that was just not what happened. And in my opinion, it was probably the main reason they lost, because Daniel Jones was keeping us in the game without a run game. You could only imagine what the offense could have done had Daniel Jones had a run game to help him out, had Saquon got going, had the offensive line actually tried and block for this dude a little bit better. But it is what it is. Now let's go over the injury reports for these two teams. As on Thursday, as of right now, this is who the Giants have in their injury report. They had Carter Coughlin, linebacker, with a hamstring injury that did not practice on Wednesday. They have Golden Tate, of course, the wide receiver who missed the week 1, still out with a hamstring injury, but he was in limited practice. And then they had Tay Crowder, the linebacker, who I think also missed week 1, another hamstring, and he had full practice on Wednesday. So it looks like Tay Crowder is going to be available for week 2. I'm not sure what the status is on Golden Tate. We didn't really miss him too much, or you could argue that we did miss him because he could have fulfilled or substituted the abysmal performance that Evan Ingram gave us. But I think in terms of the receiving game, we were fine. Danny Dimes did his thing. It was really the running game that was a problem, but it's not going to be a bad thing that we have Golden Tate back if he makes it back. Carl Coughlin, he's a backup linebacker. Not really expecting any much of a big impact there. Then on the Chicago Bears side of things, they got 4 players. They have Ted Ginn Jr., wide receiver. His injury was a non-injury resting veteran that did not practice on Wednesday. So I'm guessing he should just be available for week 2. It's the same thing for tight end Jimmy Graham. And even if he was out, the Bears, I keep saying this as a joke, but they legitimately have a lot of tight ends. He has the same thing. He did not practice on Wednesday. Quinn, outside linebacker, obviously I just said, ankle, limited practice Wednesday. And of course, the sack attack from the Bear Pack, Khalil Mack, outside linebacker, with something, a knee injury, limited practice on Wednesday. Here's the thing, I fully expect both of those guys to play week 2. Only something like a serious injury is going to prevent them from playing week 2. Maybe they're just resting as well. Now listen, when I'm talking Giants at Bears, man, the one thing I'm thinking about is that we need to come out here with a win. And I kind of want to preface this a little by saying I know in my, prediction video, my scheduled prediction video that is, and really throughout the entire year, I've maintained that the Giants are a 7-9 type of team. That's where I expect the record to end up, or in that range. So that means 6-10 is a possibility, or somehow, some way with a miracle, 8-8 is a possibility. However, that doesn't mean that I'm not a fan and I'm not going out here cheering for a win every single week, which is what I'm doing, and I want us to win. And I want us to start off 1-1 instead of 0-2, because historically speaking, teams that start off 0-2 in the NFL, they don't have a good time. Now, there's only, since 2007, only 11.2% of teams that start off 0-2 made it to the playoffs, and only one team won the Super Bowl Of course, funnily enough, it was our New York Giants in 2007. Started off 0-2, went on to beat the undefeated Patriots. One of the many reasons that's such a storied season and such a storied Super Bowl win. But that's one team out of 107. And once again, I know what you guys might be thinking. We're not a playoff team. We're not a Super Bowl team. Well, I'm cheering for that anyway. And I want us to start off 1-1 versus starting off 0-2. And we do kind of have a chance here. But what do we got to do? Well, we have to have a lot more of a balanced offense. We cannot go out there and have Saquon rush for only 6 yards on 15 carries again. That is absolutely unacceptable. In my recap video, I said it was on everybody. It was on Saquon, it was on the offensive line, and it was damn sure on Jason Garrett. That offense, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all, only certain parts of it, when I say certain parts, I mean like 1 or 2 plays, look different, but for the most part, it still looked very much the same as a Pat Shurmur offense, and Saquon ended up with a Pat Shurmur stat line of only 15 carries. I know the run game wasn't getting going, but you should have still fed him the ball. That's just my personal opinion. In games where Saquon gets 25 carries or more, the Giants are 5-1, so you should have probably given him the ball just a couple more times, maybe see what happens, or tried it out with Wayne Gallman or Dion Lewis. I know they're not close to as talented or good as Saquon, but hey, who knows? Regardless, this week against the Bears, he has to get the ball more, and somehow, some way, the run game has to get going. Now, here's the difference. Unlike last week against the Steelers, where I said the run game was going to be how we beat them, the run game, the offense would specifically have to go through Saquon in order to beat the Steelers, I think it's not so much that this week. It's more so of just having a balanced offense this week. Just having a good offense and a good balance between pass and run. That means we can't run too less, run too much, pass too less, pass too much. Both sides of the offense needs to be working, you know, at the very least average together in order for us to have a winning game here. In order for that to happen, of course, the offensive line needs to produce better. I just want to say, though, big props to Andrew Thomas, man. I love this dude so much, yo. Andrew Thomas, as you guys well know, was the guy I wanted for the Giants in the draft process, and I was so happy when we got him. And he surprised me by actually coming out and having what seemed to be a seamless transition from college to NFL without any preseason, without any real type of offseason against a completely overmatched Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line and defense in general that rightfully so dominated the Giants offensive line. But Thomas, he only surrendered 4 pressures, and he was even better in the run game. He was definitely the most consistent and the best offensive lineman out there on Monday night. And while I'm not saying that you know, every offensive lineman on our starting lineup should perform the same, they should at least perform better than they did last week. And I'm going to specifically look at Will Hernandez and Kevin Zeitler. They had worse performances than I would have liked to see coming from 2 veterans. Hernandez is a veteran at this point in his career, and Zeitler should be the best offensive lineman at this point on the Giants. Much like the Steelers offense, though, the Bears offense is like nothing to sleep on. I don't know why that's the case, but people have been low-key sleeping on the Bears offense, at least the past year or so. Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, and Roquan Smith are no joke. The Bears were 9th in run defense last year in the NFL. That is not as good as the Steelers were. The Steelers were 3rd, but that's still top 10 and is nothing to joke around about. It's definitely something to be scared by. And they were also 9th in pass defense. So those boys, you know, Kyle Fuller, Eddie Jackson, those boys were making noise last year. And that seems to kind of flow under the radar. And guess what? 9th in pass defense. It's better than Pittsburgh's 16th in pass defense last year. So the Giants certainly have their hands full. And even without that, I mean, we're talking about the sack attack from the Bear Pack, Khalil Mack, now paired up with Robert Quinn. It's going to be, you know, a difficult time for the Giants offensive line. It's not going to be anything that they should take easy. But here's the good thing. Daniel Jones was masterful in week 1. Like I said, he basically carried the offense, and he did have 2 costly mistakes. I'm not going to speak too much on them. That's already been spoken on a lot, beaten to a dead horse basically. But Daniel Jones literally has to be what he was last week with just a little bit better decision making. And you know what, for a guy with only 13 starts in his entire NFL career, I am very happy with that, alright? DJ just has to be himself again. I mean, that 19-play, 9-minute drive, subtract the interception, was some of the best Giants football I've ever seen, and definitely some of the best that I've seen in the past 3 years, man. He did everything. He converted 3rd downs, 4 or 5, and that one day he didn't convert became a 4th down that he ended up converting. He made all the right throws. He scrambled when he needed to, even though our run game couldn't get going. He knew which receivers to hit. He was only hitting our starters because he trusted him so much, and trust me, he used and abused Slayton when he needed to. and he just did everything he could to keep that drive alive. So that kind of brings me to my first bold prediction of this game. Daniel Jones goes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't think this is necessarily bold compared to the ones I had last week, but hey, I said Saquon will go for 150 and 2. That didn't come true. Hopefully this one can come true. Like I said, offense or more of a running offense to win this game, it needs to be balanced simply because of how balanced the Bears defense is. That's what I'm looking at. Oh, and for those of you that were wondering what their total overall defensive ranking was, it was 4th. So this is no joke. I'm actually kind of surprised when I was looking at the stats, because I was under the impression that they were a bit, worse than what the stats said, which I will get into a little bit there. But I think this prediction here, this bold prediction, so to speak, isn't exactly, something out of the ordinary. I do think it could happen. I do expect Slayton to come back and have a good game. He had a great game week 1. He only had, about 6 receptions or something like that. You add on maybe 4 receptions onto that, who knows what he could be at. Hopefully Golden Tate can return, but even if he can't, Sterling Shepard was a great receiving weapon for the Giants. Evan Ingram, who I'm trying to keep my mind off of. I really want to bench him at this point, but it was just 1 week. And even though I'm saying it was just 1 week, guess what? I've been saying that for basically the past 3 years. Hopefully Ingram can improve, because he was atrocious last week. There's literally no way around it. Man had way too many drop passes. Dude could not block. I am just very disappointed in Evan Ingram's performance. But hopefully he can improve. At the very least, we're going to have Saquon out of the backfield in the receiving game anyway. I feel like this is a prediction that could come through. But getting back to the Bears here, they were the 4th overall total defense. Here's the reason I have a bit more confidence going up against them versus going up against the Steelers, though. And this might sound a bit weird, but I think the Steelers overall are just more talented on the defensive side of the football. And this is where I'm going to say stats aren't necessarily everything, but they're certainly important. People outweigh stats more than talent, and sometimes people outweigh talent more than stats. I try to look at it as objective as possible, but I do think the Steelers are a better defense, even though, the numbers don't say so, simply because they have just overwhelmingly more talent on their side of the ball than the Bears do. And I do think we will have an easier time going up against the Bears. That's not me saying we're going to have an easy time going up against the Bears, though. Let's keep it real. Khalil and Quinn are going to eat. But that's not to say we're not going to eat either. The Bears' offensive line was ranked 22nd in the league last year, and most of it is intact this year. They only got one new piece on there. It was the guard, actually. Jermaine Ifedi, I might have butchered his name. He's the only new addition to that Bears line. Everybody else is returning from last year. That's Bobby Massey, Cody Whitehair, James Daniels, Charles Leno Jr. And this was a unit last year that struggled. That was not what they were in 2018. In fact, they had a massive drop-off. In 2018, I think they were a top 10 fringe top 5 offensive line. Last year, not so much. And with what this Giants D-line showed me last week, another thing I was impressed by DJ. I was impressed by Andrew Thomas. I was impressed by this D-line, and I was very happy that they came, they basically fulfilled my bold prediction. I'm going to give Lorenzo Carter a pass there. But this defensive line, man, specifically Dexter Lawrence and 100% specifically Leonard Williams, they were amazing last week. Leonard Williams got consistent pressure on Big Ben last week up until he was gassed out. And I said I think that was both mentally and physically. Physically, obviously, because they were on the field so much. They gave the Giants offense many opportunities, and the offense simply could not capitalize. And that does take a toll mentally as well. Hopefully, they're mentally tougher this week, and they're physically more conditioned. That's all I got to say about that. But Leonard Williams surprised me. I mean, hey, officially right now, he has more sacks this year than he does all of last season. I'm happy about that. He seems to be stepping into his role as, that defensive tackle that could both run stuff and get to the passer. And my boy Dexter Lawrence, that I've been saying since we drafted him, has more pass rushing talent than people realized. It was a cleanup sack, but Dexter was getting pressure on Big Ben as well. And then, of course, Lorenzo Carter, he almost got that sack. He was getting consistent pressure. In fact, he was ranked as the 10th best edge rusher by PFF coming off of week 1, which I was surprised by. I didn't realize he had that great of a game. I believe we could get consistent pressure on Mitch Trubisky and force him to look like his real self, because he is not looking like what he looked last week against the Lions. This dude, I don't know what happened last week against the Lions, but he 100% turned something on that was not Mitch Trubisky. I don't expect that to happen twice. We know what Mitch Trubisky is at this point in his career. It's his 4th year in the NFL. He's not that quarterback, man. Granted, He was amazing last week, but it was all in the fourth quarter. 55.6% completion percentage, 242 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a passer rating of 104.2. Mr. Trubisky was amazing last week. That's not happening again, and it's partly the reason why I focus more so on the Bears defense for this preview than I did the Bears offense, because I know I have complete faith that we can get consistent pressure on Trubisky. My bold prediction, second one this week, is that Carter and Williams are going to combine for 3 sacks, and I really think that can happen, both because of what they showed last week and because of what the Bears offensive line is. Now, they did only give up 1 sack, I think. I think we could get 3 sacks on Trubisky and force him to look bad. Now, the Giants secondary has to improve. I don't know if it will directly improve this week, but the matchup that I'm looking at is Allen Robinson versus Bradbury, who was toasted a few times last week, I admit. He was really only beaten really badly on that Chase Claypool play, but for the most part, James Bradbury was good. And Allen Robinson is already disgruntled with the Bears, so who knows how that's going to play out. Certainly in our, for our positive, that is. And other than Allen Robinson, in terms of receiving weapons, there's not anybody on the Bears that scares me. I think the other guys are role players. They're good, but they're not Allen Robinson. Of course, the run game, Bears rushing attack last year was 27th in the league. The Giants D-line, I have confidence, can stop it. That being said, they did get over 100 combined rushing yards last week. The Giants did let Benny Snell go for over 100 of them last week, so I could be wrong about that as well. But granted, I just think that the Giants defense can hold this Bears offense. I really do. And I think if anything, it's going to lie on the Giants offense once again to win this game, because I think the defense, just like last week, is going to give them a lot of opportunities, whether it's going to be stuffing the run, forcing 3 and outs, getting turnovers and sacks, whatever the case is. I have confidence in this Giants defense, specifically the defensive line and the linebacking core, which was pretty good last week as well. Shout out to Blake Martinez. I have confidence that they could hold this Bears offense down, because I think we can get pressure on Trubisky. So with that being said, my closing thoughts, the Giants will have to play a balanced offensive game to win, and we will lose if Saquon gets 6 yards again. I do want to emphasize that, though. The defense has to make the Bears pass, and they have to make Mitch Trubisky make mistakes. They have to hold down that run game, which I think is very doable, and this game is a lot more winnable than Pittsburgh. And for the first time this season, I am going to say the Giants win 20-14. So put your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. Whether or not you think the Giants are going to win, whether or not you think they're going to lose. That's it for now. I'm out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I'll catch y'all in the next one.